Breaking news. The SAAFF AGM is in session, reflecting on the last year. We cross now to Janita Marais for an in-depth look at the last 12 months.
Jacob, this morning we've got an AGM and we can reflect with our members what we've done over the last 12 months. I think one thing that's really a highlight in our arsenal is definitely the merchant shipping. Maybe just a context, what was the aim of the merchant shipping?
Well, Janita, undoubtedly, I do agree with you. I think in the context of the merchant shipping bill, before the social partners came together in NETLAC, the current realities of it was that we would have had additional touch points in the logistics network that would have created friction and waste in our system. And before the engagement in NETLAC, which we were very much a part of, we would have added upwards of 50 billion rand each year to the economy. So I do see that as a significant victory for not only our industry, but indeed the rest of the economy, because it would have added additional time, it would have added additional cost, and it would have created uncertainties that we're already dealing with in the extended network. So to me, that stands out as the primary victory in 2025, undoubtedly.
And when we reflected, people would say that we need more people in the ocean modality, and that's why they want to bring in the merchant shipping bill to say, let we split the deep sea movement from the coastal movement. Do you think it's a practical solution for us in South Africa?
If we consider the fact that ocean shipping, it runs on international schedules. Either you are part of the schedules, which we are to varying degrees at varying at respective ports in the country. But if you are outside of the schedule, you are kind of a secondary player to the industry. And there are instances with transshipment hubs globally that they do operate on that kind of model, and it can work. The unfortunate thing in South Africa, we are quite far away from our trading partners. So therefore, we have to slot into the networks as best as we can. And unfortunately, we have some transshipment capabilities. We've lost a significant market share in the last 10 years or so, but we can claw that back by improving our port efficiency, improving our network rotation, but then also the ancillary activities surrounded in the ocean industry. And I think that's where we must add significant emphasis and additional work, in that we can add bunkering capabilities, we can add crew changes, we can add additional let's say activities which is not the primary activity. So there is undoubtedly an opportunity to add to the surrounding ocean freight industry, which is not specifically in the carrier industry, and splitting the cargo movement between deep sea and between transshipment and feeder vessels, because additional time, additional handling, additional cost, additional uncertainty, and that's something that we cannot have in our industry.
Addressing the pain points.
Thank you. Definitely, if I come to you, I mean, Jacob is very passionate about the ocean modality and how we bring the data to assist. But some of our members have huge pain points in terms of the other government agencies, the intervention in supply chain, and how that creating friction and waste, which they normally cannot transfer over to the cargo owners. What do you think the successes that we achieved over the last 12 months?
Certainly, Janita, I think the majority of the 17 government agencies presents a significant challenge, but at the same time an opportunity for us to exploit and deliver reform and through digitization and process changes. So where digitization is the longer term aspirational objective, we have certain building blocks that take us there, which would be having a more manual or more robust manual process. And I think if you look at it, for us, key successes to celebrate was the SAP stops, the SOPs we've put in place, were based, as you've guided us, on a scientific risk profiling, case recording, and a feedback loop mechanism that has put back around 54 million rand per week into the supply chain of cargo owners by removing unnecessary stops And then if we look at some of the other achievements, 12 days in October last year for State Vet and BMA Health has been a massive change to less than 48 hours, which was even beyond the service standard that existed. And that's through a project plan methodology where we prioritize key areas, deprioritize areas for sort of medium and longer term interventions that has resulted in, as you've mentioned, removal of friction, the removal of waste, and as a consequence, storage and demurrage, which is a massive pain point to our members.
What would you say? Many members will say, we must leave the government, they must do their work, and we must do our work. But what would your view be, because you work with the members? The government's not capable. So we can sit back and say it's not our responsibility. Or what would you think would be a more proactive approach?
So Unita, you often talk about a shared responsibility and a shared logistics network. And unfortunately, government does not operate in isolation. We do coexist, and the insights from business will help government to achieve reform and to build capacity. We understand the supply chain intimately, and I think that's where government relies a lot on the insights from the private sector, from trade, to help them achieve reform, as evidenced with the interventions we've experienced toward Q4 last year and into Q1 this year, which is painting a very different picture for the regulatory layer reform in our logistics network.
Ian Bird on improving efficiencies within the logistics industry.
My name is Ian Bird. I am heading up the Business for South Africa engagement with the government, the National Logistics Crisis Committee on Transport and Logistics. The situation at the moment is very difficult. It's very fragmented in the intermodal space. We have been required to try and put things together, to put the value chains together of the respective parties. However, it's been very difficult without a coordinating body. And we believe the increase in general freight is cardinal to the reindustrialization of South Africa. We've been finding that the various modes and various players in the industries, in the intermodal industry, are not coming together. The handshakes have not been taking place effectively and efficiently for a range of reasons. We haven't scratched the surface yet of what the problems are in the intermodal space. If we have to, we must reindustrialize South Africa. It's not even a question. The value lies in the economic benefits from the industrial products and the general freight business. That's not to say the commodity sector is not relevant, but we have devoted significant time and effort as Business for South Africa over the last 3 years in that space, particularly on a volume basis. We need to move to an economic impact arrangement now, or economic impact assessment, and that's definitely going to come through the general freight. And unless we get the players working together, we're going to continue to see the inefficiencies and lack of access to markets because of those inefficiencies.
A voice in the industry is the sweet spot.
So you two colleagues work in different spaces. You work on the logistics side and you're much more on the BMA and the governance side. What would you think is the element that can bring us together? Because when we have a voice in the industry, do we just talk? Do we have empirical data? Do we build relationship? What will be the sweet spot in our environment to make useful change or impactful change?
It's a very important question, Unita, and I think our members are of course the experts in the logistics chain. They are on the demand side of logistics, and I think that's where it's very important to realize the coordinating element that we require. In our space specifically, our currency is data and information, and I think we have migrated or evolved along this path quite significantly in the last couple of years. We have started out some 6 years ago with the cargo movement report, where we realized as industry we do not have a lot of credible collective logistics data. And it's very important that when we consider 10 to 14 different role players, we consider 45 different steps, depending on the flows, that a lot of things are happening. And our members, they sit at the crux of that. They are the true architects of the supply chain. Although on the supply side, which is typically your terminal operators, your spatial planning, your connectivity, your infrastructures. We need those touch points to connect with our architects. So that's why it's very important that we get data sharing agreements. And along this journey, we have forever increased our integrated logistics platform. We get a lot of additional data points, which is very important to understand this complexity of logistics and the importance of knowledge, of data. And I think the initiative with the Container User Forum is very important. We are evolving, we are maturing as a collective logistics industry, and all of the role players, of which our members are key. It's very important that we connect all of these linkages. So that, to me, is very encouraging, and it's something that we will take further as we mature further along this journey.
The importance of logistics interdependence.
Does this work make your life easier or difficult?
It definitely makes it easier, Unita. And I think if you look at the interdependency between the logistics and the regulatory layer, it cannot be overstated. Often when we engage our government agency partners, we are often asked for used case studies or data. And if we're not able to evidence our statement, our position, which is grounded in empirical data, it becomes very difficult to move the needle and to achieve reform. So undoubtedly, there's a very close relationship between the logistics layer and the regulatory layer. And I think if you've achieved, as we have experienced at the Port of Durban, for example, phenomenal gains with the efficiency at the port level, the logistics layer, that can't be short-lived by the inefficiencies in the regulatory layer. So definitely independent. To answer your question, I think the sweet spot is definitely data.
The future of the logistics network.
Jacob, if we look at the future, what would you say would be the ideal logistics network picture? If you had to paint it like a canvas and draw a picture, what would that be?
To me, Unita, that's a very intricate question. I always look at what do the best do. So we look at global best practices. To me, significant developments recently has been the adoption of community systems, whereby in a complex network, such as logistics, where you have a lot of role players, you have a lot of touch points, you have different modalities, you have different realities. It's very important that you get all of that on the same platform and people looking at the same things. So typically in our industry, we talk about old community systems. They have different names. We are busy developing a digital logistics planning platform. We are also very much involved in integrating all of the data points that we have. But if we as an industry, we all look at the same sheet, at the same information, all non-confidential, all looking at information that can assist the next step in logistics. It's very important that cargo move. Cargo must move at all times. So if you're looking at the same data sets, at the same information, that makes it a lot easier. And it's very important that we migrate and that we might mature in this journey and that we all plug in the same system so that we take away uncertainty, we take away a varying degree of unpredictability, and that we import into the system a common thread and a common view, and a view that's very much agnostic of any commercial information, but aids the next step in the process. So to me, that's something that really excites me in this industry. We see a lot of additional interplay between the various parties involved, and also the interplay between the various constraints that we have that explains this mess that we currently have in logistics. It is truly a mess because it's so complex, but plugging in to the same data can really assist us significantly in maturing in this journey and helping each other, because as we always say, it's a shared network, shared responsibility, and what the traders do, and what the lines do, and what the transporters do, and what the operators do, what the regulatory bodies do, they all impact each other. And if we look at the same sheet, that was significant.
A significant economic value.
We have recognized on the container corridor particularly, and the container movement out of Durban particularly, is a significant economic value. We don't see that any longer in the commodity space. We need to focus our efforts, and unless we make the point-to-point and the handshakes smooth and efficient, we are not going to get the benefits that we're seeking as a country in that space particularly.
Progress in 2026.
Devlin, how do we, what Jacob said, how do we digitalize it in the BMA? Do you think we will make some progress in 2026?
I think our hearts and minds is in the right place in terms of that objective, Anita, where across the 17 government agencies, each agency has a different mandate. Their mandate needs to balance the enforcement and trade facilitation, whereby systems speak to each other through a common platform. You often have referenced the single window system, and you say the single window is a technology, it's WCO data model based, but if the process doesn't align and you have a conflict between the policy level and the implementation, it becomes a challenge. So I think that's our first point in terms of remediation. And then once that's done, is to have business in the room within reason to share the realities of what happens behind the desk so that we can digitize. But it is possible, it has been done with our peer countries on the continent, and we're a resilient nation, so we will digitize. That's our aspirational objective and our aim.
The time for the healing of the wounds has come. The moment to bridge the chasms that divide us has come. The time to build is upon us. We know it well that none of us acting alone can achieve success. We must therefore act together as a united people for national reconciliation, for nation building, for the birth of a new world. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement.
Architects of supply chain since 1921, empowering South Africa's freight forwarders with over a century of expertise and innovation in logistics. Visit www.saaff.org.za.